You know, I was thinking the other day that cliffhangers... Welcome back to Thoughts in the Crossfire. My name is Andy, and today I want to talk about a disproof of Yahweh. It's not a disproof of God, but it is a disproof of Yahweh. A lot of people say, you can't disprove God, and that's true, because God is not well-defined. But Yahweh, well, he isn't really well-defined either, but there are some general attributes to Yahweh that, if applied, I think result in a contradiction. So I'm only disproving the type of Yahweh which has these attributes that I will list, so if you don't believe in Yahweh in the way that I will describe him here, then it's not really a disproof of your particular Yahweh. But if you believe in a Yahweh who is omniscient, eternal, and just, there's a bit of a problem. Omniscience and eternality together entail that free will cannot exist, but free will must exist for God to be just, which means by asserting that Yahweh is real and that Christianity is true, which generally includes those things, you are asserting both that free will exists and that free will does not exist. That's a contradiction, therefore your original assertion was false. And this is why it is a disproof, not simply a rebuttal to a proof. So how in the world does omniscience and eternality preclude free will? I actually remember having a discussion about this in my youth group several years ago. It might have even been Sunday school, might have even been in elementary school. But I remember that this discussion about divine foreknowledge and free will came up in a kind of trivial way. But I remember saying God knowing what you're going to do doesn't mean that he's controlling what you're going to do. And that's true, but that doesn't answer the question about free will, because free will isn't about someone not controlling you, it's about you having the option to do multiple things. And so if God knows what you are going to do, it is necessarily the case that there is only one thing that you are going to do. If there are multiple possible things that you could do, God couldn't know what you were going to do. The response I've heard to this is quite an interesting one. It's that God's knowledge of your action comes temporally before the action, but logically after the action. And it's kind of a weird concept, and our language is definitely not equipped very well to deal with timeless beings. Through symbolic logic, it's not that hard, but our language's symbols don't deal with that very often, so it's pretty hard to talk about. But it kind of makes sense, right? You do an action, and it's a free action, and then God finds out what your action was after that in the logic, but because he's a timeless being, he still knows it temporally before you. It kind of makes sense, except there's a big problem, because if God is eternal, what you've just had is a non-omniscient God at one point in the logic, and then an omniscient God at another point in the logic. So God has changed. And that's not consistent with an eternal God. Now, if you don't believe in an eternal God, if you believe that Yahweh is non-eternal, if you believe that Yahweh can change, then you don't really actually have a problem here. But if you do believe that Yahweh is eternal, which I think most Christians do, then you have a big problem here where free will can't exist. Now, I don't think many people would disagree that justice necessitates free will, but let me just clarify that anyway, because maybe someone's thinking, well, maybe just free will doesn't exist, and it's something like God gives the correct result or the correct consequence to our actions, even if our actions are determined. And the first thing is that this kind of goes against some other parts of Christian theology where we are supposed to be spiritual beings, we're supposed to be made in God's image, God wants a relationship with us, etc., and that's not really consistent with us being determined functions that we necessarily are with an omniscient, eternal God. But the real problem is this. Justice means getting what you deserve. So let's think about what it really means to deserve something. If I was crossing the street, and I was good to cross the street, the cars that would be intersecting that crosswalk all have red lights, but someone comes along and hits me, and I get injured, do I deserve to get that injury? Well, maybe if you say that God is actually punishing me through these indirect means for something I did, then maybe I deserve it. But remember, I don't actually have free will, so it wasn't really my choice to do those things in the past either, and it certainly wasn't my choice to get hit then. So, does it make sense to say I deserve that? Probably not. It doesn't make sense to say that I deserve something when I didn't choose anything that led to that. But free will not existing means you're not actually technically choosing anything. So, you can't deserve anything, so justice cannot be applied to you. So in summary, Yahweh is supposed to be just, which means free will must exist. But Yahweh is also supposed to be omniscient and eternal, which means free will cannot exist. So by asserting that Yahweh exists, that Christianity is true, you are both asserting that free will exists and that free will does not exist. That's a contradiction, and therefore, by the law of non-contradiction, the assertion that Yahweh exists is false. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave any disagreements you have in the comments below. Let's discuss about it. This channel was really just created to discuss. I'm only 17. I don't think that my ideas are good for promotion yet. I'm just here to discuss them. And so I actually don't really want to be very big, but I would like to be a little bigger than I am so that I have more people to discuss with. But anyway, please discuss with me in the comments below any disagreements you have or agreements or whatever. You know, discuss about, I don't know, what kind of pizza you like or whatever. I'm actually vegan, but they're vegan pizzas, right? I mean, I'm not exactly vegan. I don't know. That's next week's video, is my problem with vegans as a vegan, because I have a little bit of a problem there with most vegans and the philosophy or the lack thereof behind veganism. But meat eaters, you aren't in the safe either. So anyway, I'm disagreeing with everybody. That's my channel's thing, is disagreeing with everybody. Okay, yeah. Thank you so much for watching. See you next week. Bye.